Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who, we had the Time Meddler. What was that one about?
Well, we learned of the existence of other, what would later become known as Time Lords.
Yeah.
He had his own TARDIS.
He did.
And had landed in the Middle Ages, trying to stop the Battle of Hastings and preventing the Norman invasion. For whatever reason, we argued that back and forth for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But we never did figure that out. But it was very interesting because it did give us a glimpse into what the showrunners were thinking about, that ultimately they would involve other people like the Doctor.
Yes. Now, I had some interesting conversations about this on Twitter where earlier on in that episode, I was like, oh, what if he's a Time Lord? And then he had a TARDIS, and I was like, oh my gosh, I really did not think they would go that way so early. And people have been very quick to try to tell me that he's technically not a Time Lord. I don't see how. People are very specific about this, even though the Doctor said that they are from the same planet, just 50 years apart. So if anything, it makes it more confusing. So he may or may not be a Time Lord. He has a TARDIS, so at the very least, they just call him the Time Meddler. So,
and I guess, it is possible that the Time Lords and the whole hierarchy with the President and the Council, the whole works, may not have actually existed in the Doctor's time and came afterwards. That would be one theoretical explanation of it. But let's face it, he still serves the same function as the Doctor. He is a time traveler, time and space traveler, can go anywhere he wants, and this guy chooses to directly interfere rather than like the Doctor, who sometimes accidentally interferes.
Yes. And someone else also tried to explain, because we were so confused about what this guy's plan was, and technically, I think the whole plan for the Time Meddler was just to cause chaos, but he was trying to pass it off to the Doctor as well. The Earth will be improved by this, basically, because of how much we argued, okay, well, how would this improve Earth? I guess it just shows how bad of a lie it is that he's like, oh, well, in the 1300s, they'll, be in planes and stuff. And it's like...
Yeah, it didn't seem to me that he had a malicious intent. If it were chaos, it would simply be somebody who said, hey, what would happen if we stop the Norman invasion?
Yeah.
Because, I didn't get that characterization from the monk at all, so...
Ironically, it seemed too well thought out to just be like, oh, I just want to bring chaos to the Earth, but also not thought out enough to where it's like, okay, well, how does this plan actually work?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely an interesting episode. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
And by the way, I am not on Twitter, and I don't actually watch the finished product of what he and I do for like 2.5 weeks afterwards. I get it, and there's always usually at least a dozen or so comments before I ever see any of that, so that's why I'm somewhat behind him on all this.
Well, that's true. I will be honest, at time of recording this episode, I still haven't edited the last episode. It hasn't gone up to Patreon or anything yet, so it's just because pretty much right after I just went onto Twitter and started asking questions. Yeah. But yes, there is definitely a delay for you, which is why sometimes when I'm like, so what happened last episode? And you're like, I don't remember. I'm 2 episodes behind on where I'm watching.
Well, I was about to say, I think just this past Monday, I posted on my Facebook page the first 3 episodes of The Chase.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, well, today we'll start discussing. I went, no, we've already finished The Chase, and we've gone on to the Time Meddler, and so anyway.
Yeah.
That's where we are. That's right. Where I am anyway.
And now we are starting the 3rd season of Doctor Who.
Season 3, the final season of William Hartnell.
Yes. Also, almost none of these are complete serials.
Oh.
Yeah, we've got a lot of missing episodes. This one in particular that we're watching today has 3 missing episodes of a 4-parter, and I think the next one or so is completely missing. I think it says here serial number 6 is complete. That's the only one where it's all completely good. So we have a lot of reconstructions that we're going to be going through.
Oh, boy.
Also, something also interesting, we kind of talked about this. Next week, we're going to be doing something slightly different for our Doctor Who reactions. Because the next serial is technically a one-episode serial, but that episode was missing. And it was actually remade in 2019 by a group of, I think they were college students, but I can't remember. But this group, they remade the entire episode because I don't think it has the Doctor or anyone else in it. And they, like, rebuilt all the sets, got the costumes, and I think they even used the same cameras that were used in the 60s. So it's a complete remake of the episode, and we'll just be watching that version of it next week.
Okay.
And yeah, and it'll be a very short video, short recording, and I think it's actually supposed to, like, lead into one of the bigger serials coming up. So that'll be next week. But this time around, yeah, we do have we've got 3 episodes worth of reconstructions, but the 4th episode is intact. So yeah.
And by the way, for years now, I've been listening to you use the word retcon, and I always assumed I know what it means, but where did it actually come from? And I finally looked it up. It actually goes back, I think, to like the late 70s or early 80s, and it basically means retroactive continuity.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're either altering facts that are already known or adding facts not previously known, which somewhat changes the perception of what we know now. So, who knew? I didn't.
It's basically just a rewriting of continuity after the fact, which Doctor Who has a lot of in this.
Yeah.
There's also in the spinoff Torchwood, they have a drug that, like, wipes a person's memory, and they call it a retcon pill. It's a very clever name, I think. But yeah, this is also similar to the conversation we had about when I would call the reconstructions recons, and you said, like, oh yeah, I think of, like, reconnaissance instead of reconstruction.
Yeah.
So
generational vocabulary gap here.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, that's pretty much that. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then we should go ahead and get into this episode of Doctor Who. Here we go. Hey, I forgot to mention, full length on this episode is available for free. If you want to watch the full length reaction to this episode of Doctor Who Classic, what you gotta do is head down in the description or to the pinned comment, click on that link there. That will take you to the full length reaction. There's no show footage, just us. You're gonna have to bring your own show footage, but you can watch it completely for free, and if you like that, you can sign up for full length, full time, for just $5 a month there on the Patreon page. You don't have to if you don't want to, but you can if you want to. Anyway, also, if you just don't want to watch in full length, that's fine. Just wait a few seconds and the video will start. So, yeah, you can go do that. Let's just now actually get into the video. Here we go. Now, we didn't get a scene last time. Oh. This is a very different recon than we're used to.
Intergalactic Roomba.
Now see, I'm curious if this is footage they actually did save, or if this is new footage they created.
Yeah.
I'm going to find out. Come on, my child, and bring my stick.
Makes you wonder if they spliced in the doors opening from another episode.
Yeah.
What's up? Who are they?
You can tell that's a cyclorama in the background because they didn't straighten out all of the wrinkles in it.
Well, they actually had actors in that moving shot.
Sorry to have kept you waiting. Won't you sit down?
Again, a female-dominated society.
Thank you, I will.
Very unusual for the
I have to
60s.
hear the report. Oh, we have a small number of men, as many as we need. The rest we kill. They consume valuable food and fulfill no particular function. And these are not what you would call human. They are cultivated in test tubes, We have very good scientists. I am a living being.
So basically, most of them were clones grown in a test tube.
Yeah, I guess.
What's that? The Darwins did say 14 dawns. 2 dawns. Tomorrow is the last day this planet will ever see.
Okay. That is part 1. This is a very interesting recon we've got.
Yeah.
So it is, when our schedule says the episode is partially missing, I figured that means certain episodes are missing, not parts of the episodes are missing.
Well, it makes you wonder if they, found some of the old tapes, but they were, badly damaged, and they basically salvaged what they could and then used the telesnaps for the rest.
Right. It's definitely like a shock every time they switch back and forth between it.
Yeah.
So, and obviously the audio quality is a lot worse during the actual recon part. So this is a bit of a struggle. This is definitely a moment where it would be really nice if we had subtitles.
Yeah.
I'm really trying with this audio here, but
Now, that does not look much like a spaceship.
not really. It looks like kind of like a spider almost, like it could walk across a planet.
Makes you wonder if all of these times where we see, aliens with the blonde hair, and not just here but on Star Trek and some of the others, if that's kind of a subconscious portrayal of the master race that the Nazis were trying to accomplish. The tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, athletic types who always have some fatal flaw.
Yes, well, it's tough, but it's not impregnable. No, it's pretty common metal, really. Yes, it's nothing unusual, Well, I suggest we go in instead of standing around here admiring the scenery. What are you talking about, Doctor? You just dropped it fiddle around. Don't argue, please. Don't argue.
Maybe you were right about how the ship looks really weird. I also like that the only tool the Doctor has is actually a screwdriver.
Can I have some food?
Leaves.
I mean,
That's all there is?
that is a salad.
That is our food.
Here.
It's all salads are, just cold, wet leaves.
No, he is our leader.
And I'll have some of what she...
You cannot. It is food for our leaders only.
I've hardly seen spare, does it?
Fair?
Yeah, I mean, she should have special food and you have to eat that.
It is food. A leader's gun can destroy anything.
What? Even the chumblings?
Even the machine.
Well then, surely it would be better if you all had these guns. Well, then you wouldn't have to fear the machine.
Stephen's about to start a
There is
revolution.
only one gun.
Lies down and puts on a blanket.
I guess.
Yeah, these are all cutouts.
Well,
A grill rig.
What could they be looking for?
Oil?
It's molybdenum.
oh, not again. Yeah, that's
superimposed.
yeah, that's someone did that in Premiere.
Not a week just yet.
And that's part 2.
Wow, very hard to follow, especially the audio.
Yeah, that was tricky. I think we got the gist of everything that they were saying.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting because clearly on some of those shots where it's like, all right, this is very obvious. Someone went in the 2000s in video editing software and moved an image of a Chumbly across the screen. I could go and do that, in Premiere on this video too. So now what's interesting is that shot where the cane tapped on the little Chumley, that was an actual shot of him doing that, but then it immediately went back because you could see the fades of the images. So it's like, so it makes me wonder, okay, is the only surviving footage of this episode that split second where the Doctor's cane taps on it, or, and I don't know if this would be the case, but did someone get a replica of the Doctor's cane and green screen himself tapping?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
That's a lot of trouble to go to, but...
Well, I mean, it's nice that somebody is going to that trouble, but
yeah,
if they had just done what they did, like with Marco Polo, I think this would have been much easier.
Yeah.
And again, with the audio being so bad, subtitles, other than just, when they're narrating what's happening when nobody's speaking, subtitles would have been very good.
Yeah, because, like, it sort of, like, depends, because, like, with something like Marco Polo, which I honestly feel like is sort of the gold standard of reconstructions, in that episode, though, it's like, okay, the audio is very clear, so whoever recorded that audio, like, they knew what they were doing, or they just had a really good machine, or they put it to their TV in such a way that it all came out clear. Like, I think this guy put that microphone right up against his TV, and it just overloads the audio. But it also helps that in something like Marco Polo, there actually isn't a lot of music in that when all the characters are talking. Yeah. Or like, Chumblies with their sound effects going off. So it's kind of their double-edged sword, because we've said before, like, oh, well, they should have, a bit more music in the background while things are happening. It's like, yes, they should have, unless, and they could not have known this, that these would end up being reconstructions, in which case it actually hurts that.
Yeah.
So...
But I think we're setting up the basic idea, and this is one of those late 50s, early 60s science fiction themes, that you've got the tall, stately, good-looking, blonde-haired, blue-eyed women who you immediately, from an Earth standard point of view, Western world point of view, is supposed to be the good guy, and they actually turn out to be obviously kind of fascist, communist sort of things.
Yeah.
And then you obviously got this little suckerpoid, and their little Chumblies, who are not the ideal Earth vision, and apparently they are I'm assuming, going to turn out to be actually quite benign.
Yeah, the Rills or whatever, I assume then everything should be, like, they're more cool, and whichever it is, like, for these, like, humans or Dravens, they just, I don't know, probably just some, like, war-conquering species that are trying to go against the Rills, so...
And I can't figure out why they would be mining ammonium. Now, I mean, ammonium's a very good product for certain things, but, this is not like when they were doing the molybdenum thing.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm sorry about the molybdenum joke. That's hysterical.
It's amazing. You're going to remember that word now for the rest of your life, and every time you bring it up, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. I never remember it. Alrighty. Part 3 is a full episode.
Yay!
We need to enjoy it while it lasts. It's interesting that they didn't just put that shot at the end of last episode.
What?
Doctor!
Oh, I can't move it! It's immovable! Wait. I have an idea.
Crawl under it.
Might be able to sabotage it.
Nah.
Now be patient.
There's plenty of room. Crawl under it.
You know what this machine's for?
And you obey my orders?
Yes, Mother.
Why?
Because you are our leader.
And? Well, because I order that there will be no patrol now.
We have a prisoner. In order to save him, the other two must help us. I do not understand why they would want to help a friend.
I know you don't.
We would not.
This is the
we would
opposite
leave
of the
him
Clone
here.
Wars.
Yes. You will see a vast, white, exploding planet.
She's not
And
blinking.
know that they have died with it.
She's
But
not
we will
blinking.
See them
There she
die.
goes.
You will not.
So it seems that the ammonium is keeping the Rills alive. They have built the Chumblies to help them stay alive while they're mining for something else. That seemed to be what the Doctor was saying.
I think there was something about, like, converting air into ammonium, so...
You've taken those people off with you?
Why not? What do we gain if they die? We will help you rescue your friend.
It's a funny way of saying it.
Something
Why
is
not?
worrying you.
Yes.
Yeah, notice he's got no blanket on,
Yeah.
like he did in the cutout. For all we know, though, that could have been a cutout of a burrito or something. Take the gun. Leave the cannoli. Ooh.
Wow. Steven's a bit more brutal than we're used to.
We can empty the oxygen out of that section and you will suffocate.
So
If you touch that, the door will open completely, leaving you at the mercy of the machine.
Ready?
Pressure.
Normal.
Temperature.
could you just leave the door cracked?
You stay here, child.
No, I'm coming with you.
All right, come then, come. Come along. And you, stay here until you receive a message. Go on. Quickly.
Well, that's gotta be fun.
The pressure has locked the door. You must surrender or die.
Yeah, but
Or fire the gun.
the metal's bad. You could probably break through.
Why did Steven get billing over Vicky that time?
Well, I don't know. All right, that's part 3. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. We are back to Recon Town. Oh boy,
The exploding heads. It's Andy Griffith.
that's not the turtleneck he was wearing. You could have used the scene from last episode for this.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder if they made the recons and then found footage later.
He cannot live much longer, Margaret. Soon he will die. We do not wish him dead. But he is our enemy, also our hostage. Machine with bomb approaching. Quick, take cover.
An open window?
They didn't break the window.
What is going on, sir? What are you trying to do? I'm going to transfer the power and my ship is the interior of the new ship here.
They're gonna jumpstart the real ship. Got some jumper cables there, Doc.
Yeah.
You want me to stay here? Yes, I want you to stay here and be...
You know, on any other episode, I would say that we're about to take a Chumbly on as a companion.
Yes, quite.
You know, technically, we do have an opening. Normally we have 4 people, we only have 3 right now.
We believe in self-preservation. Oh, yeah, sure. Now, if there is a choice, the doctor must go. He travels further than we can. And everything he has shown he stands for is what we believe in. So, it is better that he goes. Who's in the driving ship? They said they intended to leave this planet in yours. We are prepared to take them with us. Oh, that's not what they mean. They take your ship, you stay here. We must hope they do not succeed. That's so little timeless.
I should just have that image just scroll across the screen during the video.
How many miles long is this cable?
Yeah. It was a little too easy there.
You may enter, but be prepared for a shock. Come down.
We're probably not going to see what they actually look like in the original.
And maybe the producers or the director understood how bad some of the aliens have looked and took the Alfred Hitchcock approach here and saying, let him describe himself as hideous, but then never actually show him, and that way people can think of it on their own.
Yeah.
The ammoniac gas escape. Oh, dear. Yes, you had better return to the other chamber. Our atmosphere is not good for you. Yes, thank you, young man.
I suppose we won't meet again.
It is improbable.
Sorry.
Goodbye.
Although the doctor seemed to be just fine breathing that stuff.
The Chumley with you will escort you back to your ship. He will protect you and obey your commands. Once you have gone, he will destroy himself.
No.
It will be painless, merely putting itself out of action. Yes, I think I understand, and thank you very much.
I mean, it is just a machine, I guess.
Others when they are... It's starting to motors. We've got less than half an hour, Doctor. Yes, sir. Quite, quickly. Come.
We're really just gonna leave the Dravins here to die.
A machine.
Oh, there's our classic volcano stock footage.
That may actually be footage from one of the nuclear tests of that time period.
Maybe. It was a good explosion on the
You see the
planet.
disintegration on the scanner, Doctor?
Look at that planet. I wonder what's going on there.
The planet Walnut. No, you don't show a lifeless surface and then show me jungles.
It's the forest moon of Endor, clearly.
So no discussion about leaving the Dravin behind?
Nope.
Oh.
They're just dead.
That's
That's...
well, I mean, yes, from a overall story standpoint, they deserved it because they were horrible people. But that doesn't seem to be, in context with the rest of the Doctor Who canon.
I would have figured that Maga would have been left behind.
Yeah.
Maybe through her own stubbornness or something. They would have saved the soldiers at least, because they're just following orders, know. So, now it's interesting at the end there when it's like, oh, look at that planet. Wouldn't it be nice to go there? I would assume then that because next episode is our one-off episode, which doesn't involve the Doctor or Stephen and Vicky. I guess it's just that they saw that planet, and now we're just going to see something there on that planet without the Doctor. So, something like that. I don't know.
And by the way, I've been thinking about this through the entire time. Looking at the name of the Dravin leader there, her name is Maga, although it's Maaga, but not to make a political statement, but she certainly was a MAGA.
I thought of that too. And when I first saw it, like the way it was spelled, I was like, all right, MAGA, make America awesomely great again.
I was thinking, make Aryan America great again, because that's, seriously,
yeah.
blonde-haired, blue-eyed, that's...
Well, presumably blue-eyed.
Yeah.
We technically can't say, because it was all black and white. We don't know what color her eyes were.
All right.
So...
Well, again, except for that one point, a fascinating story. And again, absolutely the most basic concept of science fiction. You have this incredibly good-looking, intelligent, supposedly intelligent group of people who are just the worst fascists in the world. On the other hand, you have a group of robots, which are, inherently to humanoids, kind of scary. And you have, the Rill itself, who appears to be a somewhat, grotesque, again, Jabba the Hutt kind of person. But they tend to be the good people, and you have to basically say to yourself, you can't judge people by their looks. You have to judge them by their actions and their thoughts. And that's a brilliant storyline. And again, just that thing at the end where I don't understand how they left them behind. I mean, that's that Batman Begins. I can't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
True. But this is the Doctor we're talking about. We're not talking about Batman, we're talking about the Doctor. And, the Doctor who flat out said in this episode, oh, I don't kill things, which I think he has done at least once, at least a Dalek, But then again, these guys, as bad as they were, they aren't the Daleks, So it's like, it is very odd that all 4 of them were left behind.
Yeah.
So...
now, again, it could be in the reconstruction that we didn't see that their little battle with the Chumblies there kept them from getting to either the TARDIS or the real ship.
Maybe.
But that wasn't very clear there, and certainly the scroll at the bottom didn't let us know that.
Yeah.
It looked like the Rills left them behind and the Doctor left them behind.
Yeah, I think it was more that. Because, I mean, before... I don't know, I feel like before... the Chumblies even went out there to fight them, to defend the Doctor and stuff, the Rills were already taken off. So yeah, I think I guess it was more of a, hey, we offered and they said no, so we're just going.
It was their choice.
Yeah.
So
I guess
we'll have to accept that.
This is definitely an episode that is hurt by the reconstruction. So and especially just the audio quality of the reconstructions.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting because, when in the specific recon parts and the telesnap parts, when you see the Rill, it is a completely different design from what's actually shown in the complete third episode.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder if the recons, all 4 of them were made, and then they found episode 3 and some footage from episode 1 and episode 2.
Could be.
So, and I also wondered that, in this episode, really the only shot that the only moving shot that they had was at the end when it kind of showed the back of Maga and she's grabbing her head while the planet's exploding. It almost makes me wonder if that was, because you never see her face, I wonder if that was a reshot later, someone just got the sort of same wig and outfit and then just sort of did that.
Yeah, I think it was. It appeared to be some kind of reconstruction, live reconstruction of that particular moment.
Right. Which is weird because that was only 3 seconds long, and they, got in the normal stock footage for the explosions. Yeah. So, yeah, it seemed kind of odd. So let's see. We can kind of go into the notes already. Let's see. I mean, I wrote down the recon. It was pretty. It was pretty strange. I do like the little bit of effort again when they showed the Chumbly just kind of moving across the screen. It's okay, I could see for each of those shots okay, I could probably do this in Premiere. Give me about half an hour to figure out how to do it. I could probably do it, which probably means that now I'm going to force myself to edit in a Chumbly going across the screen every so often. So
that would be hysterical.
Yeah, that's great. Add more editing for myself to do. But yeah, so I mean that's interesting. It kind of makes me wonder though. It's if you can go to the effort of doing that, you could take it a step further to where you have just sort of the normal backgrounds, and then you do that for the Doctor. So it's just these cardboard cutouts just sort of traveling across the screen.
And I have to say the cutouts were not as good as some of the ones we've seen previously in some of these episodes. Because, I mean, you could still see they didn't, I call them shave it, they didn't get the black outline, so you could definitely tell that the foreground pictures of the people were obviously not any kind of match to the background.
Yeah, well, and then obviously on some of the shots where it's this is a completely different outfit to what this character was wearing, other than the Doctor, who always wears the same outfit. But it's we see in episode 3 when Steven is suffocating and he's wearing his turtleneck and a jacket, and then it goes to a completely different room for the shot in episode 4, and he's just wearing a button up, and it's okay, and again you could chalk that up to if all 4 were made right in a row, and then they found episode 3 later, they just didn't know that's what he wore in that episode, but it was still kind of weird.
Yeah.
So, I did like the Chumblies, the design of them.
Yeah.
They were pretty interesting.
That's again, you can see the influence of the Robbie the Robot from Lost in Space later, but originally from Forbidden Planet, and you can also see the evolution from that to R2D2 and then BB-8, because it's that same tiny little android type creature, beeping and whirling and burping and stuff like that. So it's just kind of interesting to see that progression from the 50s right up through till the 2010s.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting just because of how small it is compared to just the other ones we have, with the Daleks or the Mechanoids. It's like, well, because that's the interesting thing. It's like, okay, the Daleks, which are pretty big, you fit a normal person in there, and then the Mechanoids, so it's like, okay, we have to make these different from the Daleks, so they just made that but bigger, basically.
By the word,
a lot more
by the way, finally figured out. I kept wondering, what is that shape called that was there in that city of the Mechanoids, and I mentioned Buckminster Fuller, and finally went back and realized that's called a geodesic dome. So that, again, very big back in the 60s. It was the structure of the future. There's even a partial geodesic dome in Oklahoma City, the Gold Dome down there at 23rd Street and Classen. Used to be a bank, but it was an architectural marvel when it was built, and again, probably late 50s, early 60s. But yeah, geodesic dome.
Yeah. So yeah, the Chumblies were definitely interesting. A good design. And I like that they also like it's segmented, but it also can sort of collapse when it's like injured or something, and then it can come back out. So,
and I think they lost the opportunity of a cool little companion there.
Yeah, you could almost see it as like a prototype K9, honestly. Yeah. So
now, I have not seen K9 yet, so we'll have to go from that.
Oh yeah, that's right. I guess we
never saw any episodes of that.
Yeah, that's true. I think the most is I think he had a cameo in the Five Doctors.
Five Doctors.
Yeah, that's right. I've only seen him occasionally, even in the Sarah Jane spin-off show. He was barely featured in that one. So, let's see. For the Dravins, for their design, it's like I get they make them look very humanoid. It's interesting that okay, but how do we differentiate them because they're not humans? And it's like, okay, so here's the idea: we put little sparkles where the eyebrows were. And that's it. That's all I got. It's like, okay, well, that's definitely alien, but I kind of kept looking at those those are weird. It looks weird. There's just some little sparkle dots where the eyebrows were, but
again, I mean, that's enough. And the fact that they all had the exact same hairstyle, the four women were, probably at the casting call, they said we need four women who are roughly the same height and the same weight and who have roughly the same facial features, and then we can wig them and costume them. So again, I don't want to say that they were clones, although they said that they were grown in a test tube or something like that.
Yeah.
But the idea was, yes, unlike humanoids, unlike humans here on the Earth, who every one of us is different. We can get into twins and triplets and so forth, but in many times, even twins and triplets and all the rest of them are fraternal. They're not identical. So, unlike us, you couldn't send a group out into space and then somebody have the assumption that all humans from Earth look the same way because we're so different. But this apparently is attempting to say all Dravins look exactly alike. We do keep some men around, but they're totally useless. So this is a matriarchal society. Women make all the decisions, and yet, strangely enough, the matriarchal society in this instance was very militaristic, and that's highly unusual. Because usually, when you get to the Wonder Woman and the Amazons and the Greeks and stuff like that, the maternalistic society is much more diplomatic than they are militaristic.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. We had 2 dawns before the planet exploded, although I swear they only had one night, so it kind of worked out like that. Yeah. Of course, they never showed a shot of it being nighttime, but I guess you could sort of chalk that up to the recons.
Yeah, the only clue that we had that it was nighttime was when Stephen went to sleep and the guarding him fell asleep too. So we assumed that was one of them, but that was the only indication of the passage of time at all.
Yeah, that's true. And it was another planet with multiple stars, which is interesting. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so they brought up the hull of the Dravin ship, and how the doctor just easily like scratched it with his screwdriver, which again I love that that's the only tool he has is just a regular screwdriver. So I like the idea that he's gonna look at it and be like, you know what, this needs to be cooler, and then he makes a sonic screwdriver. Anyway, but they go through all this to show that they don't really have good hull, and then they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Like,
now again, this is just a kind of a minor observation on that. Again, I think what they were trying to do with that was to show that the Drovins were in fact an inferior species. That the Rill had obviously a much better spaceship, but this inferior species attacked them in space. They were able to both crash and again lost quite a lot. But I think the idea behind that was to simply show that the Drovin were not what they said they were. They were not only an inferior species, mentally and morally and everything else like that, but also that they really had a crappy spaceship.
Yeah.
And they caused this wreck, and they were basically the source of their own problems.
Yeah, that's true. Because they even say, they don't have that many thinkers, for I guess this probably isn't like the exact ratio, but just on this ship, for one person who's like a scientist, she's not really interestingly, she's not actually that militaristic, but she has 3 soldiers with her. That's just her crew on this spaceship,
although they did lose one when she killed the original one.
That's true. There were originally 4 along with her, so yeah, that is interesting. I guess it's like that they could be more of a species that they think very highly of themselves, but they don't really have the society or the technology to back it up.
Yeah.
So they kind of resort to the only thing they can do, which is just trying to conquer people. Yeah. So
again, not to continue to go back to this, but let's face it, in the 1960s, we were still recovering from Nazi Germany and fascist Italy and even the communist Soviet Union. So the Germans, the Italians, and the Russians did try to become greater than they were. They had this, especially the communists had their elite, which is absolutely against everything about communism. Communism is supposed to be just that. Everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others, is the way the Russians did that. And they had inferior technology, and yet they tried to make themselves into a power, which ultimately, again, led to the collapse of the Soviet Union because they simply couldn't sustain it. They simply couldn't back up the talk with the walk, I guess is how that phrase would go.
I guess so.
They talked the talk but couldn't walk the walk.
I'm starting to think like we need to start like developing a drinking game, more than because I'm sure there's someone who's doing a drinking game every time we say the word interesting. Of course, there shouldn't be many people left doing that because they've probably died of alcohol poisoning by now. But I do say we should do a drinking game anytime you bring up like Nazis or communists. No, and that's fine. Look, I say interesting all the time, so I've got no room to speak. But I just think it's funny.
Later on, we'll get to it here. I have another completely different comparison. So
yeah, I did notice that. Which, by the way, so I've seen your handwriting before. This doesn't seem like your handwriting.
Well, I was writing at an angle because I didn't want to distract from what was going on.
Well, because I've noticed that like the occasional time that you write something down, I kind of look at it and it's like, this looks like I wrote it. And it's like, I know you write better because you've specifically picked on my handwriting before. So yes, my handwriting that has only slightly improved over 23 years. So
yes, Alex's brother often makes comments about what appear to be misspelled words, and they're really only just words that Alex has written indecipherably. But I won't say which ones they are. We'll just go on from there.
Okay, there were words that this was stuff I wrote in 6th grade.
I understand. That's why I'm just saying.
All right.
It's a running joke between Alex and his brother.
Anyway, let's see. We had the Rill and the ammonia, which is interesting. It is interesting. It kind of seemed like that the Doctor was not really affected by the ammonia when they went in to the Rill's chamber, whereas Vicky and Steven were. It makes me wonder if like now they're starting to think like, okay, so what, like, what differentiates the Doctor's species from humans, and maybe that's a bit of that, because like, you know, later on in Doctor Who, they would have like, okay, he's resistant to some radiation, not all radiation, but he's resistant to some radiation to an extent, like he can absorb it. But in the first Dalek serial, they had all that radiation, and he was the one who was kind of getting hit the worst. Yeah. So it makes me wonder if now we're starting to like develop more characteristics of a Time Lord. Let's see. I wrote down Steven's escape, which, I mean, at first it was good when he just knocked that one. What were they called? Draven. When he knocked that one Draven out, just completely. Like I don't even think I would have ever seen Ian do that, or Barbara, but that was
Barbara might have.
Maybe Barbara, but that was just a clean hit, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was shocking, for a man to literally strike a woman and knock her out. No matter how bad the woman was, in the 1960s, for a man to strike a woman, that would have been very, very controversial.
Yeah, I could not see Ian doing that if that was him. But yeah, so, I mean, it does sort of beg the question, like, I wonder, we don't fully know everything about Steven, so it's like, okay, well, maybe he was a pilot or an engineer, but maybe he had some training, in case like they were attacked or something.
Well, usually, even early space explorers were almost always test pilots, and if you were a pilot for like the Air Force or the Navy or the Marines or whatever, you still had combat training. You were a Marine first, then a pilot, and so forth second. It was only later when we got into, for example, the moon landing. They made it very clear that even though Neil Armstrong had a military background, they wanted very clear that he was not the soldier type, that he was basically a civilian who had served in the military, and therefore he would be the first man to step out onto the moon. Whereas Buzz Aldrin, if I recall correctly, did have more of a military background, more of a soldier's background, but was also, also a pilot, I guess, and there were very specific skills that both of them had to be able to land on the moon there like that.
Yeah. I always wonder, like, who made the choice that Armstrong would go first?
The NASA headquarters, the people in charge, I think, made that ultimate decision, again, based on the idea that, if I recall correctly, first of all, that Armstrong was the best pilot. They knew if anything went wrong, he would probably be able to land the craft better than anyone else. But I think it came down to the fact that his background, the all-American kid sort of thing, was what they wanted to put out as far as the face of the moon landing.
Yeah, that would make sense if it was more like, oh, he's like everyone else. Yeah, he's got some military experience, but he's kind of like everyone else, and he will be the first man on the moon, rather than Aldrin, who, like you said, is more militaristic, or he served more in the military, I guess. So yeah, let's see.
But John Glenn, I can't remember. I know John Glenn wanted to be one of the first guys to go up in the Mercury, but again, they chose Alan Shepard to go up first, and then Gus Grissom, and then John Glenn got to go up on the third one. John Glenn was the first American to orbit the Earth, but again, he was all-American hero, U.S. Marine, that sort of thing. But again, there's a whole lot of politics, a whole lot of public relations behind all of that.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, I guess I haven't seen too many moon landing movies, but I don't know if they ever really include that type of stuff in the movies.
No, we saw The Right Stuff, again, for if you haven't seen it, brilliant film, which was just about the Mercury program, and we've been wanting to see First Man, which is about Armstrong and Aldrin and Collins.
Yeah, that's true.
We should figure out some way to watch that
someday
if we have to pay for it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If I guess we could look at a free trial. We're off topic, way too much, but I do want to just get this out there that any subscription service that holds a movie hostage and we can't just rent it, that's not right. That's just not right. Yeah. So, that That was a huge tangent, but whatever. We know y'all like that. So,
well, what was it? We wanted to watch. What was that Disney film that we wanted to watch?
Inside Out.
Inside Out.
That took like 5 years before we ever
Yeah.
saw that, because we just couldn't. I don't remember, like, I think it finally like became rentable on like Amazon or
Yeah.
Google Play, and then
They originally wanted like $15 to watch it. It's like,
yeah,
why?
you had to just completely buy it instead of rent it. And of course now we can just watch it on Disney Plus anytime we want, but still. Let's see. We did have the jump starting of the real ship, which was funny.
Yeah, considering we just did that this summer. I had a car that was built in 2004 and had about 175,000 miles on it. It was still a good car, a nice little Jeep, but 16-year-old car. We decided to trade it in, and the day we were going to take it down to trade it in for the new car that we got, it wouldn't start. So Alex and his mom and I all went. I literally pushed the Jeep out into the street, backed another car up to it, did the whole jumper cables thing. I mean, it was just. It was, a 3-ring circus just to get it started.
Yeah.
Fortunately, got it charged up, drove it down to the dealership, and once I got it there, I said, all right, it's here in the parking lot. It's now their problem. So,
Yeah, you who probably shouldn't be pushing a car. I mean, you are strong for your age, but still, and sorry, but you're nearly 70 years old, and maybe you shouldn't be pushing cars. And then there's me. I have a bum wrist after a car accident earlier this year. So naturally, the two of us are pushing a car into the street. So that was a great idea. Luckily, for the doctor and the Rill, they had a 5-mile long cable that they could extend to the TARDIS.
Tumbling was able to string across the desert there.
Yeah. So that was interesting. All right.
Is that mine? All right.
Yeah.
Now, you get on to me all the time for the Nazi, fascist, communist stuff. But here's a thought that I had when he was talking to the Rill, and the Rill was saying, look, if we can't make it, you still need to go. There is no point in your dying. We'll stay here. If that's the way it's going to turn out, we'll stay here, but you definitely must go on. I had a very interesting thought there, because, again, this was a recurring theme, especially in the 1950s, about Christianity. The whole idea behind the movies like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments, all that's more of a Jewish thing. The idea was, the Rill was saying, look, there is no need for you to sacrifice yourselves for us, all right? It's the fact that you must survive, and if we have to give our lives so that you survive, we will do that. And that's very much a theme, especially throughout the 1950s. And again, it may be, the godless communism that the McCarthyites were talking about and that sort of thing. But it was just an interesting sort of thing there where he was saying, look, even if we don't survive, you need to. Now, that being said, I also had just a momentary flashback to World War I. So this is before Nazis and communism and all that. Well, I guess communism came in World War I. Oh, yeah. But a lot of times, especially in the trenches, when the Allies, and again, particularly British, needed to make a crossing of no man's land to get to the German lines, there was barbed wire everywhere. And the only way through that was literally for a soldier to throw himself on it, and then the other soldiers would literally step on him on his back to get over the wire to be able to fight the Germans. And the guy who threw himself on the wire rarely ever survived that. You know? So it's one of those things. And again, what I thought the Rill was saying is, look, if we need to sacrifice ourselves so that you can survive, we're willing to do that. That's the best outcome for this entire situation. Yeah. So it's the Christian way. Again, hats off to the British and to the Americans and the French and everyone else who did that. A soldier who understands, I must do this for the good of my fellow soldiers and for my country and for the good of the world, to give up their life like that, that's just astounding. That's just, salute.
Because there's never a moment where the Rill think like, oh, well, maybe we could take your machine and then get out of here. Yeah. Which, again, is, it does show that, because the Dravins do want to do that. They want to take the real ship. They think about taking the TARDIS, but they can't do that without the Doctor. So, it just shows like the difference between them and how good the Rill really are. So, let's see. And we also did have, just the whole, the fact that the Rill look different, and it's like, well, that's not a bad thing. You just happen to look different, and the Dravin, they look at you and think, well, you're clearly a monster, so we must kill and conquer and do all that stuff. But I do like just everything with the Rill in this episode. It'd be good if maybe we got them back again someday. So,
and again, I like the idea that they didn't really show them up close. That whole Alfred Hitchcock approach, or even Spielberg in Jaws. The first hour of that film, you never actually see the shark. It's not until it jumps out of the water onto the back of the boat that you go, oh, that's really scary. But the rest of that time, it's all hide and seek. You see a fin, or you see something. I mean, for those who haven't seen it or not aware, there are some what you call jump scares in that before we ever see the shark.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing I wrote down, and this is, I guess, sort of the one knock on the story itself, is the fact that the Dravin are left behind to die on this exploding planet, which was weird. Like, there was no, like, maybe if there was an attempt to be like, well, we could at least save the soldiers, because there was a point where, Steven was like, oh, well, wouldn't it be better if you had that gun and, if you had the nice food that the Maga gets? So it's like, okay, well, maybe Steven's trying to turn them or something, help them out. And it's like, we left them behind anyway. So, I don't know. Like, it would have made sense if maybe, now granted, I guess they can't go in the TARDIS because you don't know where you're going to end up. But if there was something like, maybe the Maga is trying to, he wants to kill the Chumblies, but the soldiers are like, no, we need to survive, so we're going with the Rill, and they leave her behind, I could get that. But
again, and I realize, we're talking with 50 years perspective here, but so often in these stories, seriously, one line or one moment would have changed that conversation. And of course, throughout the entire 4 episodes, the Rill have offered to take the Dravin with them, but there needed to be one last attempt that said, we are giving you the opportunity, come with us now, and then to have the Maga say no. If we're not in charge, we're not going to be there. I mean, not to put too deep a perspective on it, but that's the whole Lucifer thing. I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. If she said, if I can't be in charge, then I'd rather stay here and die. And then have the Rill just say, well, that is your choice, but we're leaving. So just again, one little moment could have saved that entire thing and had a really good message for both the adults and the children who were watching that.
Yeah. And then, at that point, the only problem with this would just be the recon, which you really can't get past at this point unless they find the other episodes. Yeah. So, but yeah, overall, I mean, this was a really good episode.
Good script, good episode. So,
and I think this was a new writer. Like, I don't think
Ems. I don't remember seeing
William Hem. I think he's pretty new. So, so who knows? Maybe we'll get a bit more of him in the future. So once again, next week we will be doing one episode and only one episode. It's going to be a very short video, I would assume, but yeah, and it will also be the specific 2019 version of the episode. So yeah, and I guess that's pretty much that. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
All right, then with that all being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.